Welcome to this episode of The Complex. I'm excited to welcome our summer intern. I think that we kind of officially missed the National Intern Day last week, so I'm
Yep.
sorry about
It's
that.
okay. I was a little bit upset, but we got around to it.
So
I got my
sorry.
recognition.
Perfect. So, today we're gonna just wrap up and talk a little bit about our intern's experience this summer. So let's get started. Sam, tell us a little bit about yourself. Maybe what the internship search process was like for you, and really just like what led you to Greene Capital this morning. Oh my gosh, I've been up for a long time today. What led you to Greene Capital?
So I'm Sam Neale, interning at Great Capital this summer. We're wrapping up. This is my last day, and I had an awesome summer the whole time. Great time. I'm a student at Indiana University, studying business and still not sure what yet in business, but deciding between a little bit of accounting, maybe finance.
You mean our internship didn't give you just 100% clarity?
Well, it did a little bit.
Okay.
It led me in the right direction.
That's fair.
So in terms of the internship process, this has been my third company that I've worked with the title intern, and it was definitely different than the first two. All three of them have been smaller companies, and at each one I've been the only intern.
Okay.
So that in and of itself has not changed, but going into the summer, I wanted to try to get at a big company, and figured out really quick that was going to be a lot harder than I thought.
Really?
It was, and I had a really tough time. Just the amount of time I put in to try to get into one of those bigger companies was it was a little bit sad seeing the results just not come back at all, where every single one was like an automatic reply, no. And so I expected that a little bit, but then I knew I had to turn to connections, and I love being in Indianapolis and having my dad, who's a great business person, do a lot of that for me and teach me a lot of that. So I turned to him and said, hey, do you have anyone, maybe a company, a person that you know that I could get in with? And he turned me to Andrew, who is a co-worker here with us. They're in a group together. And from there, it was very, very simple, and Andrew was awesome, onboarding and everything.
Can I ask you why, and this is, your vision of what the experience would have been like at a big company versus your experience, or like what you had experienced at a small company? Like, what were you looking for in the large that you didn't think that you got yet?
I think the number one thing is security, and it sounds weird, like coming from someone as young as me.
Yeah.
But I guess knowing just at least how a big company works is what I wanted, because I know in the future I want to work for a small company, and I want to be one of the initial, not investors, but initial,
like a founder
on the initial team. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool to see a business like one of the three that I've worked with really start from not much, like Great Capital in 2015, and then really grow pretty rapidly. And all three of the companies I've worked at have done that, and I feel like that's really special to me. But the bigger companies, I just want to know, I guess, what it's like, and to have like a full team and to be working with people that I've never even met, to just have to like communicate through Teams, through email, stuff like that is what I'm just a little bit interested in.
Hey, we teams each other from
We do.
12 feet away. How different does it have to be from that?
It's impressive how much we team. Yeah.
Efficiency, it makes sense. And maybe having this on your resume, or being able to articulate some of what you've done, maybe that'll get you to that big company next year. Or like you said, connections. Like everybody knows someone who knows someone who knows someone, and this is a huge, huge business. And I know that you probably technically interned for Gray Capital, but it's not like Gray Residential is not very present in your world too. So we feel like you're ours too. All right.
Oh,
that's all I'm saying. What were some of the key responsibilities and projects that you handled here? And I know you said you don't have like complete clarity on the future, but what did you do that you are like, yep, don't want to do that again? Or was it that everything that you did does feel very like, part of your path?
Yeah, so a lot of it was learning, obviously, and just learning a lot about what I wanted to do. And so this summer I worked really closely with the accounting team, and I thought that is what I wanted to do going into this summer.
Yeah.
And it didn't change my opinion too much.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it was just putting what I've learned in school into the real world, and to see how in school we learn how to like genuinely write down every single thing while bookkeeping, and then like here we did it and it was much easier, even though I got the basics down.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of that. Even with the marketing team, I helped Matt a lot and he helped me a lot, but it was very task oriented, which I kind of liked, rather than coming in knowing what I'm going to do every day. It was a lot of here and there, and a lot of people don't like that.
Hey Sam.
A lot of hey Sam, and I like that just this summer, just so I could get a view of how everything works and how every different part of the team works.
Yeah, and accounting, finance, whatever, like all of it has an element of auditing, and so like there was sort of like a moment where we needed to do kind of recently like a really major audit, and I immediately was like, well, this is just up Sam's alley, this would be great.
Yeah.
And you don't, I guess the best thing about it is like you genuinely look like you enjoyed it. Like for me, I would have just been like, oh, give me something human to do.
Yeah.
And you were like, it was good. You were on a mission, kind of like solving the puzzle.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that was pretty cool. So this is self-serving. You're on the Complex podcast, so like you have to say things that make sense for you on here. And I sent Sam on a mission to shop communities in Bloomington. I mean, you're a naive student, so it's not like it was like wildly outside of your realm. But because our communities are not student specific, at least like the way that you would view it, I think it was a little bit different for you because you're out looking, things that are further away, and it was just so fun to hear you talk about just like, oh, that's so far away. Like I could never, and I think that's interesting too, because sometimes operators think that there's, a way to just like pull students in, but it's like if there's reasons they don't look, it's probably not going to happen. But I so just enjoyed your notes, and for the record, I instructed Sam to start by doing like online leads first. I'm like, just submit like you're just a sort of average civilian, and what do you I didn't want to like plant a lot of seeds there. I just wanted to understand like what are people doing, and so what was something that was just either like surprising or disappointing, or from just that part, not the physical yet, but like the lead part. So
to start with Bloomington specifically, it was very interesting to see the difference between the student housing that I've been in so far and then a property in Bloomington that's just less than 10 minutes away, but not student specific.
Yeah.
And the reason that was so interesting was just seeing how much more well kept they are, I think is the main thing. And which makes sense, but and this was the first time I've ever had any sort of experience in any apartment, so that wasn't student housing. So I had seen the properties in Bloomington that is specifically for students, and I was like, wow, I really never want to live in an apartment. And I knew that for sure once I saw these, because it was just like, it's just sad how like every year is like a new wave of tenants, and they just destroy it, move out, and never look at it again.
I mean, sometimes that's how that happens.
And that's what happens. And to go to...
They drive it like a rental. You know that phrase.
Yeah, it's okay because it's a rental car.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
But that was the first thing that stood out to me specifically in Bloomington, was how much more well kept they were. And it definitely attracted me more towards living in an apartment in the future.
Yeah.
Just because I wasn't sure how all that worked yet, and to see it felt like much more of a community rather than students living there for 1 year. So that was the first thing that I noticed that was very nice to see. And in terms of the online requests, I think it went as expected, and which basically just means some of them were really, really good, some of them were really, really bad.
Yeah.
And there was like a clear defining factor. And what I did for each one was I went on the website, submitted a lead, and all of them, for whatever reason, I enjoy calling people. And so, like, if I were to go get dinner somewhere, I would want to call them.
Isn't that funny, folks? Let's hold on just for 1 second, because how old are you?
I'm 20.
You're 20 years old, and I think that, and I know you're just a single example, but you're a real person.
Yeah.
And, you know, when the suppositions are made about, you know, just generational differences, like, you want to pick up the phone and call. My daughter is 18, and she calls on the phone. She talks to people on the phone.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that there's been a mindset over the last, I would probably say, decade, and I'm sure there's still statistics that back it up, that less people, you know, are calling. But are less people calling because these communities aren't calling people back? You know what I mean? Like, I get, you know, I don't know. I just find it interesting that you would prefer to call, and you did call people. Yeah, or call properties, I guess. Yeah.
And that's what, one thing I wanted to make sure I did was put everything on them so we could get a good understanding of, like, how they run their ship there.
Yeah.
And so I submitted a lead and put my phone number in and said, please call me. A lot of them I got, bot responses back?
Yeah.
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 And
auto response.
Auto response, yeah.
Non-human. You knew it was non-human.
Yep. And to every one of those, I just responded again. I want to talk to a property manager or a leasing agent, something like that, on the phone with my phone number.
Yeah.
And we probably shopped 15.
Yeah,
20,
you did a lot of the e-shops.
15 to 20 online, and 3 of them called.
Okay.
And those 3 on my ratings were all the best. And it's really easy to be nice on the phone, I think, because it's talking to a real person.
Yeah.
And there was one other one that called, actually, who wasn't great, but the other 3 were all awesome. And it's really easy to just say, hey, what's your name? Like, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
And I responded, I don't know how many people I'm going to live with, I don't know how much I'm going to spend. And so it was nice seeing all of it on them, I think.
What was your story, quote unquote? I can't remember. Like, what was your? Were you just saying, I'm an IU student, but I don't want to live on campus, or do you remember what you told people?
It depends where they were. The Bloomington one specifically, I was a grad student.
Okay. Yeah.
And then everywhere else around Indiana and the Midwest, I was just recently graduated.
Yeah, because you did some Indianapolis.
Yep.
Properties, and then also some Bloomington properties, just to sort of like experience what that was. And
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that interesting that early you also talked about an auto response during the, you know, sort of employment or internship. Like, you want, you would like human contact, obviously.
Yeah, I really, really do not like auto responses for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And applying for internships, that makes me upset too, just because I want to at least, even if you're going to deny me, that's totally fine, I understand, but I want to know that someone looked at it and, like, saw my name and decided I wasn't the best option.
Yeah, I think that's just like a version of validation.
Yeah.
One way or another. Like, it just says, like, you know, look, I was at least relevant until I wasn't, or, you know.
Yeah.
That's good to know, because from a sales perspective, it's the same. Like, people just want to be, like, they want to be validated. And so when you said, like, it's easy to be nice on the phone, but you also said one person not so great on the phone, do you remember why?
I remember that it was just they didn't want to help, it felt like.
Yeah.
And even though they weren't the best on the phone, they still were ranked up in the top 10, top 5 in terms of just all of the
overall
properties.
Like, so is that one that you actually ended up going and physically shopping? No, but their amenities, their photos, their videos, like, overall it was good. But, you know, so if you were really out looking, would you have let that phone experience stop you from leasing there, or would you have just been like, well, that part wasn't great, but everything else
it was hard because I wasn't needing a place to live really bad.
Yeah,
and so
not
it was hard to put a face on and like really tell them I need it right now. I need exactly this, exactly that, and because I didn't have that information for them, I think they were really quick to not just like hang up and say, yeah, let me know if you need any help. Just email me like this. Mm-hmm. But I think it is important to note that if you are in any sort of leasing agent, just in real estate, but in any other sales job, if someone requests a call, the call won't be more than 2 minutes. And it's such an easy part of your day to make it 2 minutes just to do what your client wants, I think.
I was just, a few weeks ago, I had a situation where I just picked up the phone and called someone, and when I really thought about it afterwards, I was like, okay, if we had done that in an exchange via email, because I jokingly call a conversation a live email, but I'm just being funny because it's like, but we accomplished in easily like 6 to 7 minutes, I think is how long the call was. I think that would have been like, I don't know, 10, 12, maybe more email exchanges back and forth. And when you think about the interruption, each time you pull away from, one mindset or one project to do that. And I'm just like, I understand that people think the E of email is efficient. And it's like, is it?
Is it? It doesn't seem like. And a funny story just to like back this up is I had one of my internships was selling, and so I did a lot of cold emailing, and we
just love that.
And I did about 500 a week the whole summer and not a single response back, to the point where I was getting like excited for automated out of the office responses.
Oh no.
And then the last week I went to my boss and I was like, I know we're very process oriented, but can I try calling just to see what it's like? And then I had 3 people pick up that week, which I think it just shows how much you can do on a phone call in such a small amount of time, where it might take 3 weeks to email back and forth 10, 15 times.
Or just like understanding where you're going to be successful. I am a far more successful salesperson face to face, probably, but I'm pretty stinking good on the phone. And I also, there's a piece of that says like what's going to get me the least, not what's going to get me, to market in, your CRM. Right. That's like, oh, I did this. 500 emails didn't make any money. But 3 phone calls did. So like, why wouldn't you just do that? I do, like you said, process oriented. There's certainly companies out there where they, probably feel like the volume, like at some point someone's going to bite and it's going to win. But I don't really know. What did you get a combination of like text, email, call? Like, did everybody did it seem like they had their sort of path they wanted to take you down? Yeah,
every single one of them had a different one. There was probably 4 of them who did it via email, but I could tell it was a real person, and they introduced themselves, said, hi Sam, how are you? Here's what we have available. Here's what you might want. Those were very nice too. And then a lot of them was just pushing out 5, 10 emails a week towards me. Ouch. And those ones are just, I still have yet to talk to a real person. And so it's just, do you have pets? Do you have pets? Do you have pets? Oh. How much do you want to lease for? And just over and over and over again.
Did anybody send you, video, any of those sort of like more media rich support materials? Did anybody send you anything just like off the wall that you remember?
Not really. After I went to tour apartments, yes. Okay. But nothing that jumped out at me that was crazy. A lot of it was the exact same, just different platforms. Okay. Via text, call, email.
I do hear agents sometimes say like, well, I'll do all those things, but like once I know they're interested, almost as if to say that we can't control whether they're interested, and that's, I always find that to be wild, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just start there and make them interested? That's actually the role. That's, that's the job, I suppose. Let's move to the physical shops, because I'm sure that's what people want to hear. And we're not going to disclose the names of any of the communities. Our own communities were shopped. We sent Sam to the ones that we own, but also to some others that we genuinely know that we compete with, and no names, obviously, just, protect the innocent. But I remember you specifically talking about like the product, and you were quick for sure to say what you felt about the actual apartment. Tell me about some of that.
Yeah, so that was a big thing that I didn't know I would be influenced so much by, was the actual product. And that's a really good way of putting it. Was I expected to be very people oriented and show up, and if you're a good person and you're really good at showing me everything, then I would love it. And that isn't what ended up happening. And I was very, very surprised about that, because there was one property in particular that didn't have great people, but their product was amazing, and immediately I said that would be my first choice.
Right.
And I don't know.
So the people didn't matter. It's so hard. Or rather, it wasn't bad enough for you to kill the sale, I guess.
Yes, and they were still good. They weren't terrible. They weren't like hateful to be with or anything. Yeah. But it's more about the actual apartment that they showed, shining above everywhere else by far. And
they are gorgeous. It's a lease, for the record though, it's a lease up. So it's a brand new build. And that, some of us, when we're on properties that are like 4 or 5 years old, or maybe 30 years old, when we are trying to go up against the new fresh product, like it can be hard. I do think though that's where it says the balance has to be there. Like our product has to be, it can't ever be that, but it better be clean. Yeah. And then we also better be good. So, what was the one? Tell everyone the story about you went to one, and it was, how hot was it that day?
It was definitely the hottest day of the year.
Was it like in the 90s?
Up until then, it was in the 90s, and for whatever reason, I wore a sweatshirt. I don't know why. Yeah, great idea. And I show up, and this is the 5th one I've been to. Yeah. And so I was done. I was ready to be done. Yeah. And I talked to a lot of people that I didn't necessarily want to talk to that day. And I showed up, and he said, "This is a huge property." And he said, "The golf cart's not here. I don't know where it is, but let's walk." And I was like, okay. Yeah. And I, once again, just trying to keep it to myself and let him do what he wants to do. And so we walked, and we got to the apartment, and it was a mess. It was gross. And he was like, "Yeah, we need to clean all this up if you move in, and we could probably furnish it too."
Could probably
furnish it. And yeah, so that whole experience was just super off-putting. And
I mean, like, did he seem like he was hot also?
He had to. I mean,
how could you not?
He's a human, so
degrees?
I would think so. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What would you? I mean, the golf cart may have been broken. Like, what? Did anybody else do something differently that you're like, why didn't we do that here? Like, did people always have you a golf cart, or did sometimes you follow someone somewhere, or how did that work?
So the one that I really liked that we were just talking about that had a really good product. Yeah. One thing that they had was they had their leasing office, and then right next door was the show, was the apartment that we lived in, the model apartment, and for whatever, like, that's really easy to do, and I didn't know it would be bad until we had to walk across. It was probably like half a mile,
right?
And we had to walk to that one, and it would have been really, really easy for the first property to just be the model property, or the first apartment.
Yeah. So really, just like the convenience in the show was. Yeah. I mean, and there are certainly lots of operators that's exactly what they do. Model right here, quick. Get them in a predictable space. Like, I would hope it would be hard for me to believe that the unit that person took you to at the one where you walked, you'd hate to think that they knew it looked like that and still took you there. Yeah. I don't know. Like, did he seem surprised?
So how it worked was there were two. I wasn't again, wasn't sure what I wanted and told him that. And he said, we have 2 different 1-bedroom apartments.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, perfect. I don't have too much of a preference. And he was like, okay, we'll look at both. And I was like, all right, great.
Yeah.
And the second one we went in was after the gross one.
Yeah.
This was the model one.
Okay.
And even that was a lot better.
Yeah.
But still not nearly as good as the rest of them that I saw that day.
Right.
And so it was furnished at least, and the walls were painted all the way, and it was somewhat clean. So
the other one, someone probably just moved out of it.
that's what he said. Yeah,
and
it was like they moved out 2 days ago.
Do you think that would you have rather seen no units or the dirty unit? The gross was your word.
No units.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because then the mystery is still there, right?
Yeah.
Like you still have a high opinion in theory, because you appreciated the amenity spaces in that one, if I remember right.
A lot,
you talked about like, oh wow, so that part. So really, it's like the unit messed it up.
Yeah.
The unit messed it up, which definitely happens.
Yeah, and it seems like such an easy thing to fix until you. And it doesn't seem like it would be that big of a problem until you're actually there and look at it, and it's almost like I could not see myself living there at all.
Couldn't recover. Couldn't come out of that one. Yeah, well, let that be a lesson to everybody, because I think most companies have policies that say like we don't show units that aren't made ready, that aren't fully turned. But I also know that if that's all that's available, sometimes leasing agents will just be like, oh, we'll just peek in there. It's, I'm sure it's fine. They just moved out. Don't worry about it or whatever. And it's like our view of that and your view of that is obviously misaligned.
Yeah.
Your view of it was like, I can't get that out of my mind, which is why we have those policies. And it's why leasing people should listen to those policies, because they might be ultimately just like disqualifying themselves already because they can't, the prospect can't see the vision, or they just came from something gorgeous and they're just like, you know what, I'll just go there. Yeah,
and a lot of times I think you get a decent perspective of what it might look like if you were to move in there online, and it's not not super necessary to walk in a unit, even if it's like if it was just moved out of.
Yeah.
And I think that could help a lot. If you don't have one ready to show, then just don't show one, I think.
So if you are, on that note, if you are moving to Dallas for this fantastic job you're going to get after you graduate or whatever, would you lease an apartment without ever seeing it?
I think I would definitely keep the property in mind more than I would if I saw a bad one.
Okay.
So I wouldn't necessarily say yes for sure I would move in there. I think I would wait at least till I could see one.
You actually see it.
But at least it's not written off right then and there.
I wonder about like buyer confidence at this point.
Yeah.
Because we do absolutely lease apartments, completely through the process, sometimes without a human if our marketing is really strong. And I'm not worried about this necessarily, but it's like it does kind of just say like most consumers, maybe consumers are more confident now, but also like as soon as you have like bad reviews or something that's like, well, it looked great online and then I came and it was, total crap. As soon as you get some of that publicly, then I think it's that confidence that just like goes way down. So I just wondered like if your thought process was that you would, lease, like go through the whole process without seeing something.
Yeah.
You're saying it'd be better to not see something bad or not see anything at all than see something bad.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. What was your there was one that you commented on and you said that they were the most ready for you. Like you were very emphatic that like you knew that leasing team or that leasing person at that property was ready for you. How did they convey that? How do you know that?
So it was in the office, at least at the time, it was a one-person team, and he was just standing out in the front door. This was another huge property, and so good on him for being ready to be out there because he probably had a lot of stuff to do, but he was ready for me, greeted me, knew my first and last name, what I wanted, had everything ready.
Good work.
And that itself made me feel very, very special and wanted. And another thing at that property was when we drove back to look at the actual unit, he drove by 3 I think it was a couple, however many. He drove by tenants, and they all knew his name and said hi, and I was like, that's pretty cool that you have people here that enjoy being here and feel more as a family than anything.
Really
else.
engaged.
Yeah,
like your notes were like, I could tell that this person was engaged with their community.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And that was cool to see, I think.
What did that, I mean, how did that play in your, sort of like emotional tie to that community? Like, would it make you be like, oh, were you ever thinking, oh, they must take care of people, they must handle service well? Like, did it all translate like that?
Yeah, everything. And that's another good example of maybe the people do mean more than I think, because that was also a unit that I don't think was ready to show, but that's not the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, I think 3 out of 5 you identified as like not ready, and then 2 out of 5 were absolutely ready.
Yeah, and so the one we're talking about, they were, I think, not ready to show that specific unit, but everything else, the good outshadowed the bad.
Yeah. Which
at the first place we were talking about, it didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so when I think back about each property individually, the one where they were really nice and accepting, that's the first thing I think about. And then I think about the amenities, and then I think about the apartment that wasn't ready to show.
Right.
Whereas the other place, it was my immediate thought was no. And that's how much a person or a place can mean.
I mean, it's funny. We like to think that these are very thoughtful, calculated decisions, but I listened to a marketing podcast maybe like last month or something, and it was talking about how these decisions actually can be very impulsive and very emotional, and not necessarily based on any real specific logic. And also, if you had been a true consumer, based on a sort of like supposed budget, you could have chosen any of those.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's the other lesson. It's like people have choices. And, if they're holding, $1,200, $900, or $1,800, depending on what market you're in, if that's like their budget, they do have enough choices to where, in theory, they could maybe, have an idea of what they like and then go somewhere and then just feel super confident.
Yeah.
And whatever, and then just be like, I'm done. And then they never make it to those other appointments because you're like, no, you sold them. I used to sell people like that all the time.
Yeah.
I would be like, you don't need to go to Washington Village. There's nothing wrong with Washington Village. I was just my competitor, so I'm just saying that. But very emotional, very impulsive sometimes on those decisions. What, as it relates to sort of like what it takes to manage them, is there anything that you learned up here because you were sort of like exposed to, some of us? Is there anything, that you just never thought about, like, oh man, that's, challenging?
Yeah.
Did we teach you anything?
I think a lot of things, and again, I'm brand new to the apartment world. I've lived in a house my whole life, and the only experience I've had was a couple of my friends having apartments in Bloomington and me going to visit those. So I definitely, coming into my internship, I had somewhat of a skewed view of how much it takes to take care of a property, and especially when students live there, because they are up until 6 a.m. and doing stuff they shouldn't.
When the rest of us are waking up.
Yep. And so I definitely have a new respect for that, and touring, or not, due diligence on a property that we did.
Oh, that's right. Yep. I forgot you got to do that.
Yep. And that was probably when I earned the most respect for people. Was actually walking into units that people weren't ready for us to walk into. Yeah.
Let's talk about due diligence, because we, are under contract. We have a big acquisition coming up, and Sam was lucky enough to participate in some unit walks. And tell me some things that surprised you when you walked in the doors of, because we own it. And they're borrowing it.
Yeah.
But they're living in it. So it's like, I think on the outside people think, it's very consistent maybe, like in terms of not necessarily like decor, but like people's style of living. Did you see anything interesting?
Yeah, it's every single one is so different. And one thing I was really surprised about is how many people know that they don't, or don't know that they don't own it. So I got a lot of,
Yeah.
why are you here?
Oh, sure.
You're not allowed to be here.
Very
And
possessive.
And I was
Yeah.
trying to be as nice as I can. I was like, I am allowed to be here, and I'm supposed to be here. And it was a lot of pushing away.
Yeah.
And this was also the second round that we did. So this was just walking in units that we didn't get to the first time.
Right.
And that wasn't on purpose. That was they weren't there, or they had an issue, or they had a dog out or something like that. So I wasn't here for the first one.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing it was a little bit more push than the first one, because these are the ones that people didn't let us in.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a group. There's always, I say it's 90-10. There's no science behind that whatsoever, but like let's call it like 24 years of, relative experience where I'm just like, 90% are fine.
Yeah.
Or agreeable, or at least understanding of their responsibility in the fact that, we are certainly allowed to be there. And then there's like that 10% that is just like, absolutely not, you will not. Sometimes they add locks to their doors. Sometimes they just, yell at you while you're there and say, get out of my house,
And I get
yours.
It is hard. Like, it's your place. You live there.
Right.
That's your home. And it's hard to let people that you don't want there in.
Yeah.
But another thing to just, if people are renters, we don't look at anything. Like, I'm not going in there and checking out what people are doing or anything.
No.
And that's, I think, that would be my main problem is,
Yeah.
why are you here? What are you looking at?
Yeah.
And so just about everyone I went into that was, that there were people in it, I just told them, hey, I'm not checking anything out, just looking at the appliances and the floor and all that. And I think that's a really good thing to do, because I've had, I live in a fraternity, and I had someone come in my room and was like, why are you here? And if he would have just said, we're just taking a picture of the window and the ceiling, it would have been perfect.
Right.
So I think that's important to
do.
The
Let them know why you're important. Yeah. Also, I just think it's super awkward, and it can be hard, especially if you haven't done it before. I'm super chatty, which is why no one wants me as their partner during due diligence, because I am the slowest.
Yeah.
By far, because of my just genuine, I'm very inquisitive. I'll see something on the wall and I'll be like, what's that? Where'd you get that? And then everybody else is just like, Katrina, get out. And no one wants to walk with me, but also it's like, that's where that pairing is nice, to have like one person maybe that's doing all of the whatever photos are required or notes, and then you sort of have that other person that's like keeping someone calm, or saying like, hey, we're going to be in and out in just a second, how's your day going? I do think that those pleasantries though go a long way. You know what I mean? Because it can be super awkward. It's no less awkward than if those people came to your home.
Right. Yeah.
The difference is just like the purpose of it. But did anybody yell at you? Like, actually, like,
I had a couple, but I wasn't too hurt about that.
Was anybody super nice?
Yes.
Did you have?
And that was almost worse, because it felt like I was like rude leaving.
Yeah.
We had a very, very old woman, and I think she was like really excited to have people to talk to.
Oh.
And I was
right.
I tried to be nice and talk to her a little bit, and just said, hey, I have to get going, have more to do. But so it is weird thinking that it's better to be nice than yelled at, and that's not what I'm saying. But it's it's just, we have a job to do and have to keep going.
Yeah, and it is fast.
Yeah.
And you're trying to accomplish something, and it's like, there could be 300 or 400 that you have to do in a matter of a couple days.
Right.
And
yeah.
There's a staff member with you too that is, sort of being drug along, and it can be, due diligence can be really, it's stressful for all parties for different reasons, for sure. But I love that you had that experience.
Yeah, that was fun.
What are some of the things that you just, eyes wide open now about, in terms of running a large community like that? Like, is there anything that you saw, like you processed some invoices, or I don't know, is there anything that you learned that you're like, oh, I didn't think about that? Like, they have to, they have to have a trash contract, they have to have this, they have to have that, anything like that?
Yeah, a lot of stuff that I would have never thought about, like the trash contract, like even letting someone know that you have pets. Like, I would have guessed that, but letting someone know that you have a roommate because I was looking at apartments in Bloomington, and to have my so my roommate was the one who was signing the lease and taking care of all that,
Mhm.
and I didn't think I would even be like existent. I thought I would just like Venmo him
Like
after
a
he
freeloader or
and I wasn't,
just
and
pay
I had
him.
no idea that was even a thing. So that was like interesting.
Or rather, you didn't realize it was important that we knew who lived in our community.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
important we know who lives in our communities.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is, and I didn't think about that at all, and to see that come through the leases and have 5 names on a 2-bedroom apartment, I'm thinking that's they're working.
Yeah.
They're working hard. But yeah, it's interesting to see.
What are some of the just background administrative tasks that you did that now when you go by apartment community, you'll just realize I don't want to say paper shuffling necessarily, but I mean think of all the invoices we process.
Yeah, lot of invoices and I think that I never realized that living at a fraternity, I don't realize that there's anything going on besides just living there and going to bed. And I don't even know if obviously we have a property manager, but I've never seen her or heard of her. I know her name, but and to just think that she's in an office right now going through invoices, checking leases, auditing, stuff like that, I just would have never thought about that until this summer.
Yeah, it's a big ask. It's a big job, and there's just a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And all the humans, and all about those fun things. Is there anything in your academic background or experience that you think prepared you for this summer here at Gray Cabin?
Yeah.
Other than your Excel skills, your fantastic Excel skills.
Oh yeah, I love Excel.
I know
love
you do.
Excel.
You're super nerd. You're way too young to say those things.
I know it's bad, but like I was saying earlier, I saw it mostly in accounting.
Yeah.
When I would work with our accounting team, it was a lot of stuff that I knew what was going on from school, but I didn't know how a company like Gray Cap actually did that.
Yeah.
And so to see
IRL.
to see it actually happen was really cool, and it made me more excited about the future. To know that I'm not going to have to read a 300 word problem and then pick out one thing that should go in accounts receivable or accounts payable.
Yeah.
When it's really right in front of you and you have an invoice and it's not the most challenging thing in the world.
Yeah.
And you can even make it fun if you want to.
Yeah.
And so that was it was cool to see everything in real life happen as we go. But no, I didn't use any algebra
I use algebra every day.
Really?
So that hurts my feelings. That means I never brought you in on hey, let's figure this out using algebra. But maybe so we're ringing the gong because
That's a good thing.
Yeah, sold a property today. May as well just ring it while we're that was your farewell gong, Sam.
Yeah.
No?
I think that's why there was 2 gongs.
One
for me.
One was for a closing, and one was for Sam. How did the Gray team, support your sort of learning and professional development?
Everyone here was awesome. Like I said, I've had 4 internships at 3 different companies.
Yeah.
And this is the biggest team I've worked with.
Okay.
And so it was the first time I had to work over teams without meeting someone, and I got to do that with
lots
a couple,
of people. Becca, yeah.
Property managers, leasing agents, maybe even. I wasn't sure of everyone.
Yeah, that's okay.
But working without meeting someone was interesting to me, and I'm glad I learned how to do that because I've never had experience in that before. And then differences just from the team is the first internship I had was a lot less collaborative, and things we do here is team lunch on Friday.
Yeah.
I look forward to that a lot. At my last year's internship, we did a lot of stuff like that where it's really important to keep the team connected. Yeah. Whether it's our meetings on Monday morning, at the last internship I had, we did very similar thing. It was once a month, but it was more elongated, and so it was probably 2 hours a month of sitting down and understanding everyone else's goals. And I think that's another thing that we do really well here, and the team here helped me with a lot, is understanding goals. You understand my goals, I understand yours, and then keep each other accountable. Is another big thing that we do really well here, I think.
I just wrote all my stuff on a whiteboard for
There
the
we-
first time.
there we
So
go.
now everybody can
Yeah.
see. This isn't on the list of questions, but I just want to ask you, what are some non-professional things that you learned just from the humans that are here? You know, that might be a tough one to spring on you, but you
How
know,
do you
like,
mean?
well, I mean, like, internships are about work and about
Mhm.
tasks, but also it's about a work environment. I know you said like collaborative, but like, is there anything that you learned from Joe or from me or from Addison or from Kyle that is just like about
okay.
life?
Okay. Yeah. We do a lot of talking in our bullpen back there, and
Yeah, sometimes I have to shut my door. I'm like,
yeah. And it's nothing that like necessarily is like learning, but just like being able to take 10-20 minutes out of your day, I think is important, to not type the entire day or not stare at a screen the entire day.
yeah,
And one thing I do, Griffin, I learned this from Griffin, is just take a walk every couple hours.
Yeah.
And so I'll do that. I'll just walk around the building one time, and that helps just to like reset the brain. And
that's a great idea.
maybe once you get up, you realize you've been staring at a screen for 4.5 hours.
Yeah, that can
Yeah.
happen.
So
Why didn't
yeah.
Griffin teach me that?
You should try it.
teaching
It's
you things.
it's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. And so, just simple stuff like that. And then connections are obviously awesome to have. I feel like everyone's accepted me so much this summer, and I feel like after this summer I'll be able to text anyone I need, and just to have those connections is super important to me.
Yeah, it's big. It's
Mhm.
for sure big.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to other students or young professionals that, you know, want to be in multifamily or commercial real estate, investing, etc.?
I think in general, regardless of whether it's commercial real estate or anything, just like be okay with not that Gray Capital is like my second choice. I just had expectations to be at a big company this year.
Yeah.
And then it was hard for me to realize that I wasn't going to be able to do that until I just told myself maybe this is a good thing.
Yeah.
And then once I accepted that I'm going to learn as much as I can this summer, that's when I really started to realize that even if I were to work with one other person at a company with one employee, I could still learn as much as I can.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be at a Fortune 500 to learn a lot. And I think that's one thing that I accepted, and that I would if I had to give advice, that's what it would be, to just be okay with where you are and get the most out of what you have.
I think that's like fantastic advice, just like period.
Yeah.
You know, that's not like an internship thing. And also just the ability to recalibrate. You know, like, this is what I wanted, this is what I was seeking, this is what I have, recalibrate, and then like immerse. So you know, that would be good advice maybe for someone that's in a assistant manager role that's looking for a manager role, or maybe applied for a manager role and now they didn't get it, or you know, wanted to go work at the brand new lease up, which everyone thinks that looks so glamorous on the outside. It's actually just really stressful on the inside. But like, just taking that moment to recalibrate and get the most out of it. I love that, Sam. Look at you being just so mature, and
I'm so mature.
you are.
I know.
We've greatly. I've enjoyed you personally, just because you say yes every time I ask you. You know, like, hey, you want to do this? You
Of
know,
course.
like,
Another good advice is just say yes.
just say yes.
Yeah, it's really simple.
Just say yes. Yeah, like the apprehensive answer, or like, well, I mean, I'm not sure if I could, like you never didn't think that you wouldn't be able to figure it out. Like, I do love that level of confidence for sure, because, you know, I could come over and I'm pretty swift, like, just the way I work, the way I am, like, I'm just like, okay, let's go, here's your instructions, and then off. And like, I appreciated that you know, immediately were just like, yeah, I got this. And then, you know, you might ask a few questions, and then like, you know, off you went, but you definitely never were just like, but that's how you learn, is by saying yes.
Yeah.
So.
And that's one thing I've learned, not just this summer, but in the past summers, is I'm really worried to not do stuff the right way. And so what I've learned is the best way for me is to just say yes, start doing it, and just ask questions along the way.
That's all we want.
And I know it might be annoying to have questions asked to you more than you want to.
No.
But at the end of the day, it's important that you just say yes, do what you can, and then make sure you're doing it the right way. And And so that's another thing that I've learned along the way.
Yeah, for what it's worth, we want the questions.
Yeah.
We want them to be thoughtful questions, not like, you know, I could have found the answer somewhere else, but I'm just going to ask you because it's faster, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, otherwise, I always tell people a question is actually like a signal that you want to do it right. And in your case, like you just said, that like you want to do it right.
Yeah.
So you get in, get started, ask those questions. We want questions. I would much rather questions than like the call later where it's like, well, you know, the other way. So just like, please continue to encourage all the people that are in your circle, like just ask questions, just say yes, ask questions. It's
Even I learned that really quick here because I tried to do something without asking a question, and I knew that I wasn't.
Was it for me or
no?
For
it was for Kyle.
Okay.
Kyle, I worked really close with him.
Yeah.
Awesome guy, and he's really really good at explaining things, which I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
But I tried to do something, and he missed a direction, and I just thought I should like figure it out.
Oh.
And after I just went up and asked him, it all worked out, and instead I uploaded it, and it wasn't ready or it wasn't done yet, and it would have just been a lot of issues solved if I would have just asked him the question.
Just ask the
and
question.
Much easier that way.
Good stuff. Well, we're gonna end it on that. Just say yes. Just ask the question. Recalibrate if you have to, if you don't get what you want. But Sam, we've had such a great time with you here this summer.
Yeah.
We'll miss you, and we wish you the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.